morning. Hope you had a great breakfast, right? Look, I think I've got a fantastic job of moderating this session, and the topic was kind of flashing on the screen. And then, of course, we have got three brilliant minds, and to put them in a flow is like putting the Bangalore traffic in a single lane. I've got 30 minutes. Of course, we'll try to work it out. And of course, we'll have a question answer session towards the end, but keep them going as you kind of think along. And let me give you some numbers and context about, what are we talking about, right? Today we have close to 1.9 million people working in GCCs. That is equivalent to the population of Sri Lanka. We have got one GCC opening up every 4 days. That's before even if you finish a new Netflix series. We've got contributing to $65 billion annually to the GDP, going towards $100 billion in the next 3 to 5 years. And more than 50% of the new roles that are coming in are in AI, cybersecurity, data analytics, R&D, product design. So I think the entire landscape is changing, and it's quite important that we talk about, what are the states and the policy framework is helping us to achieve this. And let me start this with Jaideep, you first, right? We have seen this very closely, and when you look at the entire policy framework, what thoughts come to your mind? What has happened in the last few years, and what can we do more in terms of the overall policy framework to augment the cause of GCCs in India?
Sure, Sandeep. So before I begin, I thought since I was sitting here, you would say the new HBO Max release and not new, God knows what streaming platform you are referring to.
This is Goa.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Jaideep Agarwal. I run the Global Capability Center for Warner Brothers Discovery. Naam to suna hi hoga. Friends, Big Bang Theory. We've got Harry Potter, several of those franchises as part of our bouquet. We are a 102-year-old company, but clearly we are a startup from a GCC perspective here in Hyderabad. Honestly speaking, referring to the specific aspect of policy and regulations on the past, I did not ever think that in my living lifetime, we would literally have states rolling over each other, literally stepping on each other to welcome organizations to say, hey, come into our space, we are here to help. And obviously, I mean, when you think and reflect on it, it's pretty simple. The fact that this is leading to some of the numbers that Sandeep mentioned, huge potential in terms of employment generation, etc. Very logical for us to say. Clearly, when we were to, if one is to think from a policy and regulation standpoint, what are the top two or three things an organization or any firm needs to help set up or flourish? Rather, more than the setup, is the flourishing. It's the fundamental predictability of a policy framework. I think if you do have a lot of back and forth in those aspects, clearly, I think that's not an acceptable answer to the organization. Second is the unlimited supply of talent. Of course, I'm dramatizing it, but there is enough talent availability for us to look at. Third is the ability to skill that talent, because at any given point in time, the way at which technology and those aspects are moving forward, we need the ability to skill up that talent in a much better manner. So absolutely, those are the aspects which we are clearly seeing multiple states are coming forward. And what gave impetus was, I think it was last year's union budget when our Honorable Finance Minister actually kind of accorded it a status of an industry by itself by saying that, hey, we need to come up with the GCC policy. Now, so that's all hunky-dory, right? All the right ingredients to have a very successful GCC policy, etc. The question is how homogenized that is, how we are making sure that all the ingredients which we are putting in, we are sourcing the best ingredients and we are able to put those things together. For example, some of the infra issues which we face with sudden mushrooming of GCCs in a specific area of the city, we clearly need to think through a little longer term, like 5, 10, 15 years, versus as an afterthought in terms of what do I need to do in terms of infrastructure. Clearly, the government has done a phenomenal job. The central government has done, again, a phenomenal job with the new labor codes. realizing the fact that so far what we were going as an exception in terms of, hey, night shifts and 12-hour work days, etc. and all, there is a policy recognition that yes, that's essential for us to go down in that direction. So I think a lot has happened in these spaces, and only time will tell what are the other next 2 or 3 ingredients which we need to be successful in this GCC space. So that's how I would like to address or begin on this one, yeah.
No, that's very interesting, and you say that GCCs have almost acquired the status of an industry, which is quite true, and I think we are, of course, moving in that direction. Let me come to you, Sandeep, and I think you are much more closer on the operational side, on the semicon as well. What do you think is one policy which can help solve some of the operational issues, maybe a single window clearance, customs, infrastructure, any one that you would like to kind of elaborate on?
Thanks, Sandeep. Let me just introduce myself. My name is Sandeep Gupta. I am the country manager and VP Central R&D for AlphaWave Semi. We are a semiconductor company. I feel a little kind of out of place here because there's no one from my industry except maybe this gentleman over here from BlackBerry, sort of related. So we build the chips that are used for AI. We are basically servicing the tier 1 companies in the world, the AMDs and the Googles. That's the kind of work we do. We are doing very innovative work back here in India, absolute cutting edge work. Now, from our industry point of view, right, we do have to import a lot of stuff. This is not just laptops, right? We are importing test equipment. And if you're importing stuff which is on the regular basis, it's fine. Customs get used to it. But when we have to import something very specific, there's a lot of explanation that needs to come in. So for example, for any mobile chip testing, you need to test it with jammers. And if you have a jammer written on the custom slip, they're going to just block it. But having said that, there's prototypes which are much more expensive than the regular product. We have to pay a lot of customs duty on that. So we have to do some creative pricing or creative shipping, however you want to put it. But so customs is one big problem. I don't think from an establishment point of view, on a regular day-to-day basis, there's a problem. But tax laws, maybe on the transfer pricing, could be another area which could be looked at. Like we have cases which are going back 7-8 years and still in kind of discussion with the tax department. And that's one area I would say really which would help all the companies around.
Of course, and of course, I heard that we also have Deloitte here. We can talk to them and see whether we can really influence and talk through about some of the challenges we are facing as well from a reg perspective. Coming to you, Kevin, I think of course you run a logistic shared services and there's a lot of scope there. But in terms of the overall talent, and Jaideep, you talked about talent, right? India produces close to 2.2 million STEM graduates every year, annually, year on year, which is not much, right? Just equal to population of Australia. But unfortunately, half of them are not ready to be deployed in GCCs today because of the skilling challenges. And if you look at the overall demand now, we're talking about cyber, we're talking about AI, we're talking about R&D, innovation. So what do you think is happening now from overall policy perspective? What skilling programs are successful? How do you see this? For example, we have these boot camps on AI, on cyber. You have this industry academia tie-ups. Where do you think we can do more of, and where do we need support?
Thank you, Sandeep. We are at the crossroads today. Why do I say we are at the crossroads? Jaideep talked about the importance of talent and skilling that is essential for us to scale it forward. India, indeed, is the capital of talent, and that was 40 years back. That showed us the success of offshoring, outsourcing, and we have scaled significantly, and that has been contributing closer to $250 billion to the GDP. Now, what's happening today is a very impetus point, a pivotal point we are in. How can we pivot from that inflection point and enable a skilling ecosystem that could feed into the GCC side? I want to break down the entire GCC ecosystem into three paradigms. One is predominantly most of the GCCs are the business GCCs. They develop a product, they have a solution globally, but they have their back office in India, and they could continue to contribute to the global office, but they also have a sales office in India. And second is the services GCCs, all the HR, finance, all other platform-related support services, they do it from India. And third element is the product. Let me pass on a business GCCs that continue to do, because most of the headline work that is happening in the global organizations, because from here it's more of a sales and other stuff. But the services GCCs, if I say that is going to vanish in 2030, will you believe it? Because you talked about, Sandeep, one important aspect. The skilling is very essential. But what kind of skilling we are giving into this ecosystem today? I call that the most essential skilling that need to be given into this services component is AIQC. You talked about AI, quantum. People are not talking about the quantum. That's a big wave that is going to happen in 2027 and 2029. Why I'm clearly calling out these 2 years, there are 2 big announcements that's going to happen from the global companies. A lot of these services get incubated from this quantum, and the C is a cyber. So the service component, they will become a service GCCs providing, delivering value adds on these 3 areas in next 2 to 3 years. Now the question you may ask, what happened to the rest of the service what we are delivering? So this will become a platform, and all the other services will become a tenant. It could be either operated in the quantum platform and delivered through the AI. And rest of the service will get vanish. The third most important aspect I want to touch upon is the product. I think in the yesterday conversation, also someone talked about that we need to lead into a product nation, and product component is a very key aspect. Now, if you see, we had an opportunity of China plus one. Then India got the manufacturing impetus and growth of manufacturing happening in India. Now, we have to launch, or we have to evangelize the product aspect into the GCCs. The moment the GCCs turn to deliver IP-led, product-centric work, that's where the next big growth that is bound to happen. Now, if I come down, how the entire training ecosystem is supporting these 3 types of GCCs. That's the key essential component. Because 70-80% of the training programs, everything is fed into the service GCCs. What I'm saying is that will become invalid next to 2 to 3 years. What will happen to these people, right? All the state governments, my request is all the state governments, right? Empower the people to deliver in this AIQC platform and product. The policies has to be centric around that. And talent is the new currency. And whoever is going to print it, they will lead the new economy. And the state I come from, they produce 20% of the STEM graduates. You never know which state is going to lead. But as long as a country is going to lead the next economy in terms of the talent transformation, I think we all will be happy. Yeah.
Can I just add something to on the talent side? Look, I think I want to acknowledge while we are sitting here and having a conversation about GCCs, but clearly it is the service provider, the SIs, who really are the ones who started providing that talent. As any one of us in the GCC would have, none of us on day one have gone to the universities to hire talent. At least up to 2 to 3 years, we have literally hired from the other service providers or the other GCC. So I really want to acknowledge the effort of the service provider organizations, because they are the ones who have channelized those resources coming into the GCCs. I think it's critically important for us to understand. We are not living in an isolated vacuum out here. Point number one. The point number two is, I think it's not just 50%, it's probably a higher percentage where even though we have as many graduates, but what's the percentage which I can really bring on and from day one, can I get the maximum output out of them? The answer is, it's a very minimal number, right? So a lot of us are ending up spending a significant amount of time helping reskill or upskill. And again, I want to acknowledge the work which the service industry has done to provide us those. Of course, after 3, 4, 5 years, we are getting into our own university programs, our upskilling programs, etc. and all. That's the second part. And then the third part is around the curriculum. And I'll share an personal example in my family. My daughter, she did her engineering from one of the best engineering colleges in the country. Then she went on to do a master's outside of the country. And she told me that in the 1 year, what she learned in the master's program, she didn't learn even half of that in the 4 years of her undergrad program here. Now, what does it tell? It tells us that we need to fundamentally reinvent ourselves, even from an academic standpoint of how we are running those programs. I think those are the 2 or 3 thoughts I thought I'll leave with you on the talent side. Yeah.
I mean, quite insightful, and I don't know, I was just making some notes. Few thoughts you mentioned, right? Tamil Nadu produces 20% of the STEM graduates, and it's not enough to just kind of produce the graduates, but reskill them, upskill them, and especially with skills like AI QPC, right? So I think moving on to you, Sandeep, and of course, in semicon and otherwise as well, we are talking about moving from cost centers to innovation centers, and R&D is a very important part of the whole innovation program. Now, you see a lot of states are offering a lot of rebates, subsidies, almost up to 50% in terms of setting up GCCs or attracting R&D. Do you think is this good enough? And is just the incentive going to kind of take us to become the overall global R&D powerhouse, or there's something more that we need to do? What are your thoughts coming from an industry where R&D is quite key?
Yeah, so first of all, so there are 2 aspects very broadly at a high level in semiconductor. One is manufacturing and the other part is design. In design, we are a powerhouse today. 20% of world's chip designers are out of India, and I'm not counting people who have migrated to other countries. These are people in India, and probably I think 60% of the chips in the world, an Indian has put some line of code over there. So we are a powerhouse. In our company, we are doing absolute cutting edge work, which probably only 4 or 5 companies in the world do. And this is happening right out of Pune and Bangalore. But from a manufacturing point of view, we are 30 years behind. And so those incentives that you're talking about, the 50% from the central government, 20% from the state government, those are very important for manufacturing setups. And we are catching up. It'll take us a decade or so to catch up. And research is now happening. So I think that is going to have a snowball effect over time. And definitely that is going to happen. But having said that, right, a general theme and what Mr. Rahul Bose said yesterday regarding the Rugby Premier League was something which stuck with me. It was very important and very relevant to all of us. If you have the best coaches, the best players will come. And the best players, if they come, they will train our people from the bottom of the pyramid, and they will pick them up. So we gotta get the best coaches, the best software architects, hardware architects into our system, into the country, call them back. And not only that, we are about 100 GCC heads here. Pick a person that you can mentor, more than one person. We are mentoring through our organization, which is the India Electronic and Semiconductor Association. We are mentoring a lot of startups to build them up, to help them grow, guide them with the expertise in the field. I would highly, highly recommend that everyone over here pick someone or mentor someone and create the leaders for tomorrow. We should be seeing the new batch of leaders maybe 5 years from now sitting over here amongst us. And that is what is going to lead to innovation. When you get the best people in the world to work on the products, you will get innovation out of that. Innovation is just not going to happen by itself. Just because Rahul Bose wanted to start Rugby Premier League, it's not going to happen, right? So.
No, that's a great call of action for this audience as well. When we are in a position of influence, and if we can be a coach and a mentor to kind of have more of us, I think that would be a great contribution to the community. And talking of that, Kevin, that's the incentive side, right? What are the rebates? But more than that, I think from a compliance side, when you look at recently the data protection, data privacy rules, policies came out. And don't worry, if you have not read it, half of the LinkedIn doesn't know about it. It's a new policy which has come out. But more than in the overall context, we are now expanding to tier 2 cities where infrastructure is catching up. We need to be kind of smart in terms of managing all the digital infrastructure. So how do you see the policy framework, the entire work that we're doing on the data privacy, having the right level of infrastructure in the expansion to be able to kind of go back to where the talent is and make sure that we have an ecosystem?
Yeah, I think it's promising, definitely. These things need to happen, and these are happening at the right time, and I highly appreciate the team, whoever is doing that. Now, you asked about the digital infrastructure. It's a very pneumatical point, because if I compare India with the global, because that is where we are competing and we are scaling up in the infrastructure, and specifically talk about digital infrastructure, just a question to all of the leaders here. Do you know, how many data center or from the data center capacity that India holds today? And it's measured in megawatts and gigawatts. But as on today, 2025, what's the capacity India holds? Any guess? 40%? That's a big guess. So 2018, we used to operate closer to 300 megawatts across India. But definitely, Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu are leading in this space. They are the top 2 distributor of data centers for the country. Now, 2025, from 300 megawatts, now we have scaled up to 1.2 gigawatts, right? It's a great scale. It's like a multi-X of growth that happened in 6-7 years. But just let's pivot that into US, right, where the digital infrastructure magnanimously happening. They are going to go from 57 to 60 megawatts to gigawatts to 110 gigawatts in 2030, right? By the time we will be growing from 1.2 gigawatts to 8 gigawatts in next 5 years. So relatively, we are growing significantly well, but if you do a comparison, we'll be like 10x below the global competition, right? Now, we are talking about AI. AI is the engine of growth, and consumerization is happening. 1.4 billion people are here. These all great policies are in place, but where is the infrastructure? How are you going to scale this infrastructure? Are we fulfilling the demand of today's in yesterday, or it should be like yesterday's demand should be fulfilled today? It's a kind of a crossroad question, because predictably, what is happening is we are always have a nature of fulfilling the 2020 demand in 2025. Now, 2025 demand will be fulfilled in 2030. Instead, can we fulfill 2030 demand in 2025? That is where the real growth engine and multi-X growth will happen, because this is a very crucial point. And again, I just want to touch upon other policy aspects, which you talked about digital infrastructure and other infrastructures. All governments have phenomenal policies. And me and Jaydeep, and we were talking in our breakfast, I think most of the states in the country have a GCC policy. Can we say any other state doesn't have a GCC policy? Right? And what this GCC policy outlines, it gives a talent incentivization, capital incentivization, good infrastructure, whatever they claim, right? It's good. All are pretty much, if we compare to side by side, mostly equal. But I'll tell you, what is going to decide in the next few years is air, the purity of the air in the city. That will become one measure. The quality of the water, that will become another measure. Infrastructure, for a common infrastructure for common people, that will become another measure. Today, from some of my research, and I talked to some of the global leaders, I understand why they choose a particular location from an outsourcing perspective. There are 2 top things. One, the person from the state or the city, he's sitting at the seat at the table. He may be a CIO or a board of director or someone. And he says that, I'm from this place, Chennai, I want to be in Chennai. I'm from this Bangalore, I want to be Bangalore. Second is, like Jaydeep talked about outsourcing. These people have already done and tested this outsourcing for the last 40 years, and they already have offices in Hyderabad, Bangalore, Chennai, Pune, and they prefer to continue to have their GCC in the location. But things are changing. The other three parameters, what I talked about, that will become the policy impetus. Again, some of the policy makers are here to take note of and to consider for the future. Thank you.
Hey, Kevin, I thought you meant Hyderabad first and Chennai and Bangalore later, right? I mean, that's what we discussed outside, that you will call out Hyderabad.
I heard,
in that.
I heard Pune. Okay. Look, I think, I mean, you're talking about measure, and I'm just thinking that, we're coming towards the last section. Give me one measure. We all love Twitter, now it's called X. We love hashtags. Future ready GCCs, hashtag. What policy do you think should happen in the next 12, 18 months, which can really augment the GCCs? It's a lightning round, 30-second answer. Who wants to go first?
Hashtag infrastructure.
I'm at a loss because I think, at least in the semiconductor industry, I would say most of the policies are in place apart from the couple of things that I mentioned, but those are at a very low level. Yeah, give me a minute to think.
No, you don't have. It's a lightning round.
I would say hashtag livability. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I agree with those. Absolutely, infrastructure and livability. That's a tongue twister, but yeah.
No, thanks, gentlemen. I hope that I was able to keep the Bangalore traffic in a single lane. Not sure how I was successful. I'll probably now open up to the audience question. We can take a couple of questions. And just to kind of start it on that, which state has got the best GCC policy?